expect anything, Minister. You know, tomorrow you might see troops coming here. No, I'm serious. This is anything I can tell you now for free. And I must applaud our president. He really tried. I mean, beyond that, you can't do anything more. The delegation tried, but it's okay. Program director, everybody's a doctor here. It's Dr. William Vivian, Dr. Sibongiseni Kumalo, there's Dr. Marcos, I don't know, Kamala, almost doctor. Almost Dr. Kamala Path, the Minister of Communication, Honorable Soli Malati. You said they are the President of Education International is here. Mugwena, I've not seen him. I saw the CEO of SAIS, very important stakeholder. All the distinguished guests, panelists, educators, industry leaders, champions of transformation, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a privilege for me to stand before you this evening at this important launch of Regenesys School of Education, an accreditation of its Bachelor of Education in Senior Phase and FET teaching qualification. This evening marks more than an institutional milestone. It further signifies a collective commitment to reimagining the future of education in Gauteng as well as in the country, South Africa. It is important that one calls for reflection, ambition, and bold action. As we gather here in Sandton, the economic heart of our province, we are reminded of the paradox that defines our educational landscape. Gauteng, while being the economic engine of our nation, continues to grapple with deep-seated educational inequalities. We have schools where learners thrive in mathematics and science, supported by cutting-edge infrastructure and highly qualified educators. Yet within the very same province, we have schools where the basics, adequate classrooms, textbooks, trained teachers remain aspirational and rather a moving target given our learner population. And this situation is exacerbated by the growth of our learner population in Gauteng, which research tells us that in the next 3 to 4 years, Gauteng would have grown by the size of Free State. So meaning on average, we get over 65,000 from the past 10 years. But to just give you the statistics of this year, we have received 130,000 new learners into the system. The biggest number of which you see every year at the beginning of the academic year, which makes it very difficult for us to plan. On the first day of the academic year, we get 30,000 kids that we don't know where they come from. They arrive at the doorstep of our schools. So our learner population is growing rapidly. This is the dual reality that we must confront. And it's precisely why initiatives like this one we celebrate tonight and not just welcome. These are truly essential. The theme of this evening, innovate, integrate, impact, speaks directly to our provincial strategy. We cannot prepare learners for yesterday's economy whilst tomorrow's opportunities pass them by. Let me be clear about the scale of challenges in this province. Gauteng has over 2,000 public schools, serving almost 3 million learners. Yet we confront persistent shortages of qualified mathematics, science, and technology educators. And correct, less than 60% of our grade 12s write mathematics. And true, about half achieve a pass that enables them to pursue STEM careers. So this is not merely a statistical concern. It's a strategic crisis that threatens our province, our province's competitiveness, and our nation's development trajectory. We have embarked in what we call schools of specialization. As we were speaking, I thought we were going to touch on them. In these schools, we teach pure mathematics. It's compulsory. You would know one that was training the other day, Minister, in Katlehong, School of Specialization. One lady went there. You know, I don't know what was the agenda, because we disappointed her. She arrived in that school. She found that the school in the township, in the middle of Katlehong, has a pool. To her shock, she found learners swimming. And you know what they say about black people in water and swimming. But they were swimming, backstroke, you name them. Then when she moved, she found that there's a driving license K53 area. The school has a track where by the time the learners exit, they'll have a license, driving license, done at the school premises. Then when she took a walk, she found what you call, this fish, aquaponics, or what is it? Yes, aquaponics, tanks. In the school, where we teach learners how to actually do this particular farming business. She further, as she turned the corner, she found a chicken run, where these chickens, breed those chickens, the school breeds those chickens, they produce eggs, and they sell to the community to raise funds. As she was working in the school, she found a panel beating, spray painting workshop, where we teach these learners how to spray paint. She was not done. We're not done. Be patient. We're very busy in our schools. So I thought I want you to give a picture of how much work we're doing. She then moved to the workshops, to the electrical workshops called power systems, fully equipped with all the latest technologies. They moved to the mechanical workshop where Hyundai provided the school with the latest engines and vehicles for our children to work on. She moved then to fitting and turning, where we've partnered with also industry partners, moved into our computer classrooms. We found fully equipped computer labs. And what do you call this? The cherry on top is for free. For free. And if with all this, I can dare you, show me any private school that does that. Paying 200,000, 400,000, doesn't matter. A child in Katlehong, Komofokeng, gets the same thing that a child gets in Hilton College, where their parents eat sushi during rugby games. Nicely, no problem. And we've got what we call multi-certification in that school. And this is a game changer, Minister, where we, beyond the curriculum offering that we're giving to schools, our kids, we're giving them additional certification from grade R now. In grade R 1, 2, we're giving them coding, we're teaching them coding and robotics, and we certify them. As they move up, we teach them entrepreneurship. In grade 5, we're teaching them sign language. Grade 6, entrepreneurship. As they move up, different skills, including drone technology, you name them. So that when a child exits grade 12, they don't get that one certificate of showing that a child spent 12 years of their lives in schools, but they've got additional 12 other qualifications that accompany that one grade 12 senior certificate. And this is what we're doing now currently in our schools. And these skills are accredited. For instance, there in Katlehong, we have partners with industry so that when these learners do this power system electrification, they actually gain hours. So that the amount of hours they would have spent in school, they are actually accredited so that when they exit, if they follow the same engineering path, they have hours to prove so that they can minus and spend less time in TVET colleges and universities. So this is what we are doing in our schools so that we prepare our children. In a world that is increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence, data science, renewable energy, and digital innovation, we cannot afford to have a generation of learners unprepared for these realities. Therefore, the private sector partners represented here tonight, such as AWS, IBM, CSIR, and others, that you are not just guests. You are, what I like to say, the signals of the future. Therefore, if we do not act decisively to strengthen this STEM education foundation, we will continue to import skills, while our own youth remain on the margins of the knowledge economy. So there is a need for you to come closer and work with the department. Program Director, innovation in teacher education must go beyond traditional boundaries. And I'm happy that Regenesys is taking a step forward to play a pivotal role in this regard. Your Bachelor of Education program, which you are launching tonight, should not just be another qualification in your institution. It must represent a paradigm shift on how we prepare educators for the 21st century classrooms. Traditional teacher education has operated in silos. Mathematics teachers just teach maths. Science teachers just teach science. In this case, business studies teachers just teach business studies. But the challenge our learners face require educators who can integrate all these disciplines, who can help learners see the connection between mathematics, reasoning, entrepreneurial thinking, between scientific inquiry and business innovation. Tomorrow's educators must be more than subject specialists. They must be facilitators of learning, catalysts of innovation, and agents of transformation. They must be fluent in technology, not as an add-on, but as an embedded tool for teaching and learning. They must understand that every classroom is a microcosm of our diverse society, demanding pedagogies that are both culturally responsive and globally competitive. Therefore, business education, it is imperative. One of the most exciting dimensions of your qualification is its emphasis on business education in the further education and training phase. For too long, entrepreneurship and financial literacy have been treated as a peripheral in our curriculum. Yet in our country where youth unemployment exceeds 40%, where SMEs are vital to economic growth, this is no longer a tenable situation. Our learners must be prepared not only to seek employment, but to create it. They must understand financial systems, market dynamics, and the fundamentals of business planning. Therefore, entrepreneurship must not seen as a fallback, but as a viable and empowering career path. Educators trained through programs like the one we're launching today must be equipped to nurture this mindset, to integrate business concepts into mathematics lessons, to link science to innovation, and to demonstrate how technology can drive business success. It is indeed true when they say public-private partnership is a catalyst for change. The presence of industry leaders on tonight's panel underscores a critical truth. Transforming education is not the sole responsibility of government or academia. It requires genuine, sustained partnerships, and these partnerships must go beyond corporate social responsibility. We need substantive collaboration that bring real-world experience into our classrooms, provide continuous professional development for our educators, and ensure our curricula remain aligned with industry needs. Therefore, companies like AWS and IBM are not just technology providers, they are co-architects of the digital future. SAQA and SAIS are not just regulators, they are custodians of quality and professionalism. CSIR represents the fusion of research, innovation, and practical application that our learners must understand. In our protected quest to address the digital divide, as the MEC in this province, I'm acutely aware that innovation without inclusion becomes a driver of inequality. As we embrace digital technologies and advanced pedagogies, we must ensure this benefits all learners, not just those in well-resourced schools. Integration should not just be a theme, it's a necessity. We must integrate our efforts across urban and rural divides, across resource disparities, and across institutional boundaries. Through our own efforts, we are already seeing promising examples. Expanding connectivity to rural schools through telecom partnerships, providing tablets and digital content to township learners, offering online professional development for educators in remote areas. These are steps in the right direction. But we must scale them with urgency and intent. Importantly, the launch of the School of Education reminds us that teacher education is not a one-time event in a rapidly evolving world. Continuous professional development is essential. Our department is committed to creating pathways for lifelong learning through teacher development centers, online platforms, and mentorship networks. But this must be a collaborative effort with institutions like Regenesys, serving not just as training grounds, but as enduring partners in educators' journey. Dr. Vivian and Dr. Kumalo, I know you didn't play soccer. Let us be clear about the impact we seek. Improve learning outcomes in mathematics, science, and business studies. A new generation of confident, competent, and creative educators. Schools as hubs of innovation and entrepreneurship. And Gauteng as a continental model for educational transformation. To Regenesys, ensure that this program produces educators who are not only technically proficient, but socially conscious educators who unlock and should be able to unlock the potential of every learner. To the industry partners, view your involvement not as charity, but as strategic investment in the human capital that will drive your future success. To our educators here tonight, see yourself as transformation agents. Every lesson you teach, every learner you inspire, every innovation you introduce has the power to shape our collective future. To our fellow government officials, let us create an enabling environment. Let our policies support excellence, Our resources reflect our priorities, and our systems empower innovation. I envision Gauteng schools where every learner has access to quality STEM and business education. Classrooms where learners are creators of knowledge, not just consumers. Schools connected to communities, industry, and the global economy. And this is not just a dream, it's an achievable goal as we remain committed to collaborative and focused. Let us innovate, not for novelty, but for meaningful learning. Let us integrate not just systems and curricula, but our shared purpose. Let us measure impact, not in reports, but in lives transformed. The School of Education that we are launching tonight represents hope, hope for better prepared educators, for improved outcomes, for a more inclusive and competitive economy. And let us live here not just with good wishes, but renewed resolve. Let us go forth as partners, collaborators, and champions of educational excellence. The future of our province, our country, and our continent depend on what we do in our classrooms today. Together, we can ensure that the future is bright. And as we step forward, let us remember the words of John Shah. I hope I pronounced his name right. When he says, open quote, "The future is not some place we are going, but one we are creating. The paths are not to be found, but made. The activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. Therefore, let us be bold in making those paths. Let us be transformed as we transform, and let us create a future worthy of every learner in our province, in Gauteng." Thank you very much.
MEC, thank you very much. I think you made my job very easy. Somewhere in the program they said, I must do a call for action. I knew this was something political. I knew that this can only be done by politicians, right? Very well. So MEC, thank you. You've done half of my work. So when you come for call to action, just play back the MEC speech. And all of you know what to do. Okay. But thank you very much. I think you threw a challenge to us and to the educators in the room and everyone else. I'm quite pleased to hear how all of us have something to do in relation to what you've said. And Kamla, we have a challenge therefore for this digital transformation to be relevant and to be bold and to take it to the next level as suggested by the MEC. I also was listening quite carefully at some of the things that you're saying, and this one caught me because you spoke about that particular school. And I thought at some point you're going to say, no, this is a virtual school. It doesn't exist as yet. So now for anyone who does not know and who does not believe this, you can go to Katlehong and you will find the school. Now, for most of you also who also have not heard that in Gauteng, of course, they have this area, centers of excellence. If you go to the Tshwane, the north side, and you'll find a different level of excellence with the auto. You'll go to the airport on the Kempton side. There's all this, there's the uniquenesses of education. It's not just what we were taught, just to do scope and donor kind of thing. In these areas, they've decided to specialize, and that's a good thing that Gauteng as the Department of Education has done. The entrepreneurship element that the MEC spoke about just reminded me, and maybe just to say to all of you, next week we will be launching a school of entrepreneurship. Dr. Kia Koreadi Rauteng Kajeno, she'll be launching this, and I think her efforts are exactly in the same space. Let's not just think of educating people who are job seekers, but also job creators. And she's taking it to another level because it's SMMEs, women in it, and taking it to the rest of Africa. So we're not just launching education with the sense of entrepreneurship. Now there is also a school of entrepreneurship. Educators can come to Regenesys for their incubation process and to come and learn. Thank you, Dr. Koradira, for being part of this beautiful journey. Ladies and gents, they will serve you with light snacks, but I thought I should delay that, that we should just allow the minister first to speak, and then as we set up for the panel, then the light snacks will be served. Solimalatsi is the current Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. Now, for those of you who followed him and has followed his career, you will know that he's a communicator of note. He's played his role in the public service and in politics as a real strategist in terms of communication. He's helped shape the image of his party and the message. He's done it in the Western Cape. He ministered with the MEC for transport and the mayor there. I think linked to Ntate Chilo, and also having some background, something to do with Limpopo. He also now is linking something. Is there as a chairperson there or deputy chairperson in the of the party in Limpopo. So when they both here tonight, they have interest of Limpopo as a province. But I also note that both of them have academic credentials that I did not go into, and I'm not going to go into, except to say, when they say you're a near doctor, Kamala, MEC also is well considered as the Regenesys doctorate program, and because they've all done right up to the level of the postgraduate. So both the minister and the MEC, when they have time now, they'll consider also becoming near doctor, like you, Kamala. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Ntate Soli Malatsi.
I was just whispering to the MEC there that we are being lobbied to upgrade our qualifications, you know. And you dare not lobby us. I think we are both passionate about education enough to know that there's always another level beyond the one that you have. But on a serious note, I just want to start with acknowledging the MEC of Education, Matumi Chulani. I think in the last 3 weeks, I've been at 2 events with him. And I'm not auditioning for this portfolio. This portfolio has a lot of challenges, but also to the founders of the Regenesys School, to all the distinguished guests who are here. I want to start first by extending the apology of the Minister of Basic Education, Sivuwe Gwahube, who is a colleague that I'm equally representing, in case any of you are wondering, what is the Minister of Communications doing here? It's not by accident, but it's also equally by choice, because all of us in this room are united by a quest for education. And we've all had and been touched by the power of education and educators. My own life story would be incomplete without the impact that my former high school teacher had. And I think many of you can relate. Whenever you bump into your former teachers, you know, they still remain teachers to us, whether they change professions and go and start other careers, because those are the individuals who either planted the seed in us that became the springboard for the career choices that we made and for the path that we chose. And we should give more recognition to teachers because they play a fundamental role even in shaping the caliber of leadership that we have in society. That mentorship for me changed the course of my life, and I'm here because that teacher, Mr. A.B. Mukwena, took an interest in my life and challenged me to think about the world of possibilities beyond the boundaries of my very, very small village in Limpopo. And that demonstrates the quiet power of this profession. And it is why when the Minister of Basic Education asked me to represent her today, I did so without any hesitation, because I've seen the difference that committed teachers can have in truly changing lives. As the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, I share the value that education is central in preparing the next generation to thrive in an increasingly digital world. The launch of this school comes at a time of rapid change. In our space, we know that digital technologies are reshaping how the world learns and equally how it works. These changes are present in agriculture, in finance, in health, in media, and even in manufacturing. And they will be present in the subjects that your graduates will be teaching. And both you and the MEC spoke about how it is so important to integrate the use of digital technologies into teaching, and linked to that is the idea of opening the doors for access. And MEC, I take great comfort in having seen some of the work that you're doing in the province with ensuring that schools, particularly in townships and informal settlements, have the digital infrastructure that is required for learning and teaching to take place in the digital world. Many of us, and I know I might look younger than my actual age reveals, but many of us first interfaced with digital tools at varsity or at institutions of higher learning. And that experience was overwhelming, regardless of how talented you are and how smart you are and academically gifted you are. If you interfaced with a laptop or for us back then, which was a desktop, and you had to submit your assignment through a soft copy, interfacing with that for the first time delays your progress ultimately, and it impacts your efficiency. And as a result, many of those students struggle to acclimatize to their first year at postgraduate, at higher institutions of learning. And we need to change that. And the best way to change that is starting by equipping schools from primary school with the infrastructure so that they can interface with it there. And most importantly, to keep equipping the teachers with the digital skills so that when they interface with the learners, there are no broken bridges in between. And we can open that door to making sure that we give true meaning to what digital transformation is. So it is important that digital transformation should never just be about adding gadgets to classrooms for their own sake. We need to continue with building firm educational foundations that the MEC spoke about, alongside the wise use of those tools. Teachers must teach the basics well and let digital technologies, including AI, to enhance learning where it can add value, such as clearer explanations and broader access in local languages. Technology should enhance human judgment and creativity. However, we must also acknowledge that it comes with the burden of risks, and that those risks are increasingly accessible, and we need to put measures in place to eliminate them. This is a challenge that this school will have to wrestle with. Curriculum and teaching methods must be designed so that digital technologies enhance rather than replace the impact of human connection and the role that it does in uplifting people. Schools should open the doors of opportunity, and as Kamala said, it's important that we produce more learners choosing STEM subjects and entering STEM-related fields. Teachers must play a decisive role in this. So the task is to identify talent very early and to give learners real exposure to the digital tools and projects and provide the mentorship. And that mentorship is critical in providing the support for this generation to meet the mission that we currently live in. Our digital transformation matters, but our people matter more. And our digital future will largely depend on teachers and their ability to ground learning in the basics and the use of digital tools wisely, while balancing unlocking the potential with unlocking and nurturing the impact that humanity has. So I want to congratulate the school, and I hope that with the intake, the very first intake that you're going to have, we'll start seeing the impact of that in the caliber and the quality of teachers that are going to be shaping the lives of many young people who want to shape and have a better life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your message this evening, and we also take the challenge. Can I, at this point, noting that I have both of you who can also play a very significant role in making my life easy as an educator, suggest. Anyway, okay, let me leave you alone. I've already lobbied you to come and do a DBM with us. Which, by the way, the application's closed next week. Minister Malati, let me thank you for addressing us on behalf of Minister of Education. And again, we truly appreciate your presence, both the MEC and the Minister. And we are going to go into just a brief moment where you're going to be served with a starter before we go into our plenary. We're going to have a discussion, and that's going to be led by Kamala. But as they bring the starters through, let me also indicate just one of my experiences today, which I think is relevant for both the Minister and the MEC. We had students who are managers, senior managers in some of government departments who are doing a program with us on professionalization of the public service. And one of the things they were dealing with today was about the digitization and digital transformation, use of technology and information systems within government. And interesting enough, my summary of their presentations were, and their challenges and research process was, if they were to bring the Department of Education, the Department of Health, Department of Home Affairs, Department of Treasury into the same room and ask them to, all of them request government at the highest level to actually look at the policy review around government departments digitizing their system. Because I couldn't believe that the officials were saying to us that the reason why SASSA, to some extent, is still using a paper-based system is because there's still policy gaps in the process. I couldn't believe that we can't integrate, our technologies for different departments to be able to render services effectively. And I thought this is an opportune time to then say, please lobby for us that we can get these things together, people, and maybe challenge officials in government to actually take this to the next step. This is 2025. We can't be complaining as if it's 2015 or 2010 in this regard. But Kamala, that also brings a challenge to you in terms of how we actually then influence digitization and digital transformation across all government departments. The speakers or all the panel members, we will give them a break for a moment so that they can enjoy the starter. I think it will just take a few moments, and then we will then call upon Kamala to then do the digital engagement on digital transformation or education for about 30 minutes. And then after that, we will then wrap up with Dr. Marcos Arvanya. So the evening is almost half done. If you have not as yet had the drink on your table, there's juice, there's water. You can also get ginger tea if you want. I don't know if it works for everyone, but for a time like this, ginger tea can do great things. Okay. We will also have several microphones to move around in case we need to have some engagement or any of you would like to engage. So please do not go away, because we really want to engage with you by the end of this evening. Ladies and gents, please enjoy the starter. Thank you. The ladies and gents, if you don't know where they are, the bathrooms are on my left. The first ones will be the ladies, and the second ones will be the gents. sorry, apologies for not indicating that earlier on. And there's also
Very much, colleagues. I'm going to start off, and Dr. Makapa, if I may, I'm going to direct this question to yourself as well as to Ms. Ella from SACE. So, looking at what the research stats show us, we are seeing critical shortages in qualified STEM teachers across the country. From your vantage point, Dr. Makapa, in quality assurance, and Ms. Ella, in teacher education leadership, what are some of the systemic barriers preventing us from producing and retaining these teachers? And how can we start shifting the dial together?
Okay, it's fine. I will start. Okay. No, thank you very much, Kamala. I think we need to look at first things first. We have a big challenge in terms of your input-output process. What you put in as far as schooling is concerned, in terms of the extent at which learners at school level are taking STEM subjects, especially at senior and FET phases, is the biggest challenge. We know parents are moving and schools, because of matric results, we need to be honest to ourselves, because we are more focused on making sure that we achieve that 87% you're talking about, then we're pushing learners to maths lit so that they shouldn't be struggling and be able to pass easily in terms of those. Remember, no principal wants to account to the MEC, to the minister in terms of that failure. But secondly, I think the system has got a competition, serious one, between BEd and PGCE. And that particular issue has moved towards employment, because you'd have many of your high schools, FET phase, arguing that would want PGCE graduates because of the subject content knowledge, which is high in terms of your STEM subjects. However, those that are doing BEd would then struggle in terms of getting positions within that particular area. And I think as you launch the school and moving towards whether BEd, PGCE, those are some of the things that you need to look into, because the very same provincial education departments, the districts that are employing these teachers, are the ones that are creating that separation. And to say, because you are a BEd or PGCE student, and therefore you can do. But austerity measures are a reality in the country, because how many graduates do we have? Over 50,000 unemployed. And therefore, what is it that we do different as Regenesys in terms of making sure that our graduates really are going to be employable in terms of the schools? And that is why I'll tell you, in terms of our database, we have plus minus 10,000 foreign nationals teachers in the country in our database, who the majority of them have got STEM subjects. And therefore, what are we saying about ourselves as South Africa? And you know that Department of Home Affairs, in terms of critical skills visa, is very clear that those applicants must be having STEM subjects. And therefore, the country is relying too much on the outside countries rather than dealing with the program internally. So yeah, those are the initial issues, so that I don't take all the issues from your side. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think to me, before I can even start responding to that, I'd like to acknowledge the leadership here. I said 28 years ago, I was one of the people who did project management at Regenesys when Vivian was still young. And then, where's Marco? Marco was still young as well. But I have a certificate that we cannot authenticate at SAQA, so unfortunately we can't verify that. I studied EDP with you as well. We cannot authenticate it at SAQA. So what I'm trying to say in short, you guys have to think about taking some of those programs into, we're trying to talk about macro-credentials to ensure that they're recognized. But I want to respond to your questions about numbers. I felt that, I did ask my team, as you know, that we have the database on the NRD. We have a total of 2,154 registered qualifications which fall within the set. Of these, almost 89% is within the higher education space, the HQSF, Higher Education Qualifications Framework, and 10% of those are within the occupational space, and 15% the general further education. Now, one of the things that we looked at, it was achievement for the last 10 years in this space. We are sitting with about 871,753 learners who achieved in the STEM. And the question is, where are they? And I don't think we spend time looking into that. We're busy, trying to run more teachers and how to get them. And until we answer those questions, that surely half of them, there are some are working in KFCs, in some retail stores, and some of them lost in certain programs. Those who remain in professional, like I'm working at SAQA, majority of my staff members have a teacher diploma in the such space as well. So it's something that we need to look into. What makes them, not to come back into the space? And one of the things that I feel it becomes very critical is the working conditions within the space of teacher education. If you see some of the videos that are doing rounds where students are taking teachers, and not only that, you have the issue in the Eastern Cape where people have to pay, people who to pay them protection fee across. So that's one of the biggest risks that we have as well. And the second one that I'm looking at is issues around implementation of policies. I think we're very slow implementing policies. It takes us a lifetime to do anything as a country. And that holds us back as well from the regulatory point of view as well. And I feel that under policy, I don't think we incentivize our teachers. It's one of the worst paying professions. And surely that won't attract anybody to find themselves in that space as well. So we need to look into that. And one of the things that we're not doing very well is issues training. I was sharing with Riyadh when growing up, as we enter Social Nguve, we had a teacher, what do you call the former technical, what do you call Transvaal Teachers Training College. There was a secondary school next to it. There was a telecom technical college. There was what do you call then Technical Northern Gauteng. So they were doing engineering. So if you look in that space as you enter, so there was some sort of everything was within reach. You come out of triple TC, then you go to what do you call this? There was Central Secondary School, just in the same vicinity. Teachers are going to be trained there. Then they leave to become teachers. Then there was a TCE, what was doing that. Once you are in the field, the advancement of teaching. And I don't think we have those things anymore. So we have lost certain things that I feel we need to bring them back. And I'm hoping, looking in terms of what Regenesys is doing. And my question is always, what is that you are bringing that is different from the teacher programs that we have in the country? Are you going to sell the same thing that has been sold at most of our public institutions? I don't think we make teaching very attractive, very innovative. And I think to me this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as a country, to say most of our universities, we compete for the same people, but we are not bringing anything new. I was in Russia recently. I visited one of the called PEM University, Pedagogical University. It's only focusing on teacher education and university. And the way they use digitization and AI in trying to train teachers is something that we can learn from them. And I feel that we don't train our teachers enough, and most of them don't even have access to some of the Wi-Fis that we're talking about. I was listening to the MEC talking about, how Gauteng is advancing. But we have a program in SAQA called Taking NQF to the Villages. I've been to some of the most rural areas in South Africa where students don't even know the existence of some of the universities in Gauteng. They don't even know, once they finish school, how do they advance to the next level. They never have access to the computer. They absolutely, the gap is so huge. So for that, where are you going to get people who are going to feed in to try and really raise this? And I think the issue of maths you raised, Ma'am Ella, that this maths list is going to create a problem for us. We are talking now, but 10 years down the line, I don't think you're going to have maths teachers. And some that we need to start addressing. Let's make maths compulsory. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ms. Ella and Dr. Makapa. I think starting with you, Dr. Makapa, you made some very important points that I just want to pick on before I move on to the next question. Particularly, and me being a teacher so many very many years ago, the working conditions, and it's not lucrative in terms of incentives and so forth. I think that's quite critical, and that's something that the country has to address. Regenesys on its own, or even higher education institutions, cannot address that. So how do we attract top talent into such qualifications? I think your second point for me is also quite poignant, where you spoke about policy, and that sometimes policy implementation is rather slow in this country. And I really want to herald you for that, or commend you for that. That's what us as, in academia, we as academics say that all the time. And so private hires are a lot more agile in terms of responding to, the needs of students and what's happening in the country. Ms. Ella, thank you for your stats there in terms of the 50,000 unemployed educators in the system, and I think that's an alarming statistic, and that we're going outside of our borders to look for top talent, and particularly in the STEM subject or disciplinary areas, whereas, relating to Dr. Makapa, that talent is here in South Africa. So I think, again, there's a challenge to the School of Education at Regenesys. So I'm going to ask my next question to Dr. Kaven. And just picking up from what both Ms. Ella and Dr. Makapa had spoken about in terms of future work for pre-service teachers who complete a 4-year qualification, or in the PGC space, 1-year qualification, and what's their future like once they graduate. So we know that there's a growing disconnect, Kaven, between what learners are taught and what the economy requires, right? So according to, or in your perspective, what are the practical steps that we can take to redesign the curriculum, both in school and in higher education, particularly in STEM and business, to ensure learners are ready for industries and the opportunities of the future?
No, thanks very much, Kamala, and thanks for inviting me for this event. So let me start by giving some context of where I come from so that my answer sort of makes sense. Look, the MEC spoke about a lot, and he almost took away most of what I was going to say, but let me contextualize what I'm going to say and where it comes from. So I work at the CSR. I've been there for 27 years. I'm part of the executive team, but I started out as an aerospace engineer, did a PhD, but I've had 6 different jobs in the organization. And so we've seen the game of innovation and technology development for a very long time. Let me start by a little story. In 2020, just when lockdown happened, there were, just after April, there were 3 engineers who decided that, we can't get ventilators into the country, so what can we do to create ventilators? Three or four of them got around the table, designed a ventilator, and within 4 to 5 months, we had rolled out 18,000 ventilators in the country. Now, what does it take to create a small team like that, to create the innovation of 18,000 ventilators? And look at the multiplier effect, right? So I want to speak about that ecosystem that I work in so that I can answer the topic of policy and how we support teacher training and development. So the first thing is, it takes a village to solve the problems of the world. I think we must understand that we don't want everyone to be, cut and paste of each other. We must recognize that everyone's different. Some become specialists, some will win the Nobel Peace Prize at some point. But the innovators don't always have PhDs, don't always have masters, right? That's okay. Some work in the lab that develop the innovation. So it's okay that you're not a PhD. Some integrate across disciplines. Some don't do technology innovation, but raise the funding to do innovation. The hundreds of millions of rands. When you're in trouble with a client, sometimes your specialist is not the person you speak to. You call the negotiator to solve the problem with the client, right? So I just want everyone to understand that it takes a village to solve the problems of the world, right? The second thing is, where do the best problem solvers come from? okay? We have to understand it takes time and it's hard. It's really, really hard, okay? I'm going to cite, someone spoke about citations. I've got a citation, right? So I've got a reference. Malcolm Gladwell's book on the outliers. If you haven't read it, get a copy. It speaks about 10,000 hours of effort. It's about exposing our people to the right type of things, okay? Just having a degree, just in the right work environment, or in a work environment is not enough. Exposing people to the right types of things is important. So, and it's the same with, whether it's sports or professional careers. The life of a chief scientist or a chief engineer or a system engineer, we create opportunities for them to solve problems. And so you have to create this space, and they learn by doing. It takes a lifetime for a chief engineer to come out of the system. They're not born chief engineers. They don't come out of University of Chief Engineers. And do we have the reward and recognition framework? Do we have the career pathways? And do we have the opportunities? So I have to ask that about the teaching profession. Do we have the career pathways? Do we have the reward and recognition? Do we have that structure in place to grow and nurture our teachers? Because if we don't, we can't do it in the engineering sector. If we don't do that, how are you going to do it? So if you expect a teacher to do, I'm not in the teaching profession, but if you expect a teacher just to come out of training college and then make their own way, we're setting them up to not do much more than just what they've learned at teacher training college. They're capable of much more, and let's give them, and look at the multiplier effect we can achieve. For every teacher that is a super teacher, you are having a multiplier effect over decades. So let's understand that, right? Let's create the spaces and opportunities for this to happen. So I'm speaking about the ecosystem around teachers and nurturing that to get the best talent in the teaching space, right? So I do think we can be unique, and let's work together. I'd be very happy to come back and work with the school to talk about how we impact curriculums and how we impact teacher training in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kavin. I just want to pick up on what you mentioned in terms of chief engineers and how chief engineers leave a university, but they're not chief engineers when they leave. So it's through the varied experiences that they acquire over a lifetime or in their working situations. And it's similar to teacher education. And we have, Ms. Elo is the CEO of SACE, and I know that SACE is implementing new policies or putting new policies in place in terms of how do we bridge the divide, the theory-practice divide, between what's happening at universities or in private hires and then, work-integrated learning. And I think that's quite critical. So bringing those two together, bridging the divide between theory and practice. And it's an age-old debate, but it's one that Regenesys is going to address quite acutely. And also, Ms. Elo, through our Memorandum of Understanding with SACE as well, that's about to be signed. That said, I'm going to direct my next question to Mr. Riaz. But it's similar in terms of industry partners. So in the context of underserved schools and the growing importance of tech-driven entrepreneurship, how can teacher training programs be reimagined to integrate digital innovation and entrepreneurial thinking as foundational elements? And before you answer, Mr. Riaz, I also want to ask, what role can, for example, cloud technologies, AI, and scalable digital platforms play in enabling this transformation?
Okay, that's a pretty loaded question, but let me answer as best I can. I think, when we talk about artificial intelligence and cloud technologies, they are probably the most transformative technologies of our time. And they impact everything we do. They are available on this little device that everyone has access to, even in underserved communities. And so I think we must not fool ourselves in terms of thinking that technology is not available throughout the country. I think it's up to us, even in the underserved communities, to make sure that that access to the technology is there. We've got responsibilities as parents, we've got responsibilities as corporate citizens, we've got responsibilities as government. So I think that's the first point. It's pervasive. The second thing is that, you know, to the generation that we're dealing with, technology almost comes naturally, and we must not miss that point. It's not difficult to teach, right? But it's got to be taught in the correct way, in a responsible way. And I think, you know, so with IBM, the two big parts of our strategy is artificial intelligence and cloud. And one of our mantras when we talk to corporates in terms of making sure that their workforces are equipped for these transformative technologies, we often tell them is those that do not use AI or artificial intelligence will be replaced by those who do use AI in their daily lives and in their daily work. So similarly, it starts at the schooling level. It's really important to make sure that the educator himself or herself is tech literate, but also tech savvy in terms of understanding the enablement and the empowering effect on technology. So it's not simply sort of teaching students or kids in parrot fashion how to code or how to use a piece of software. It's thinking beyond that. And that's how the entrepreneurship is created. Now, when I speak about artificial intelligence, all the answers are there. You know, through conversational AI, you can ask ChatGPT, Llama, Claude a question, and they'll give you most of the time the correct answer. So the answers are out there in terms of all the questions that are being asked. The second thing is when we talk about cloud computing, there are tools available in the cloud. There are technologies available in the cloud. These students can experiment in the cloud. You know, gone are the days when you needed a powerful machine in order to invent, in order to experiment. It's all available in the cloud. And that's why I talk about both of these technologies being the most transformative technologies of our time. I think also, I just want to point out that, you know, throughout the evening, I've heard of a lot of problem statements. I've heard of a lot of sort of high-level solution statements. It's really time for action. And I think the MC mentioned it. It's a plan of action that's required. In the corporate world, when I go to a client and they want to do something complex, and you know, changing the mindset of a country is even more complex than changing something in a corporate environment. When I tell them it's going to take me a year or 18 months, as I did 2 years ago, because we do complex projects in corporate environments. Corporates do not accept that anymore. They want results in 3 months, right? They want you to show incremental results every 3 months. I think we've got to hold our government to account as well, to show results that will enable our schools, that will enable our educators, to show results every 3 months. Our country deserves it. There's a real sense of urgency that is required because As I mentioned, I operate in the Middle East and Africa. When I'm in the Middle East, I can feel the energy and pace of entrepreneurship and creativity. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing that here. And I think it's a wake-up call for us. We're seeing it in other parts of Africa. We've mentioned that STEM is stronger in other parts of Africa than in South Africa. It's a wake-up call for us locally. And let me end by saying that we are not short of smart people in this country. I see kids coming into IBM through our enablement programs. I interact with a lot of young people when I mentor them. We have incredibly smart people in this country, right? We just need to provide them with the correct enablement, and it starts with our educators.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Riaz. I couldn't agree more. You know, and it leads me back to thinking it's not a one-size-fits-all philosophy. And particularly with our pre-service teachers, you know, I trained some very many years ago, but my methodology or the pedagogy that I use now cannot be used in today's lecture room because we are educating a very different generation. And so I really appreciate your comments in terms of the divide between industry and what's happening in education, both at the schooling level and in higher ed. I'm going to move on to Mr. Terrence. And similar question, I'm going to actually summarize. Mr. Riaz said that it was quite loaded. So how can teacher training in underserved schools be transformed to include digital innovation and entrepreneurial thinking? And how can AWS's cloud technologies and scalable solutions help enable this shift? Much shorter.
Sure. That's quite a long question. I'll try to tackle it very quickly. So, you know, at some point last year, I think around September, October, I was sitting down with my leadership team. We had our leadership strategy sessions in Dubai. And one of the things we were thinking through, I mentioned the last time when we were here, in 2020, Amazon adopted a goal to train 29 million people for free by 2025. And we had already exceeded that goal by the end of 2023. I think at the moment we're up to 31 million, and of those, about 550,000 have been in Africa, about 200,000 of those directly in South Africa. But we were sitting as a leadership team going, we want to, from an African perspective, export African tech solutions to the rest of the world. We don't want to be adopting things that are made in Europe or the US all the time. We want to actually get Africans developing solutions, world-class solutions, and get that out into the rest of the world. And we have a phenomenal opportunity because we're really the youth of the world. Like Africa has a very young population. But there are two things that were kind of stopping us from actually getting there. One is we have access to the tech. Riaz was talking about mobile devices, cloud computing, artificial intelligence. The tech is evolving so quickly, but it's there, it's available. Funding is not a problem. Access to that isn't a problem. It is actually what we're finding holding our businesses back, holding back innovation, is actually access to that skill and capacity to think through the problem, to really get to how is this tech going to enable the business, solve the challenge, etc. And one of the things that we started in August 23, we opened up a skills center in Cape Town where anyone off the street could go in, learn some cloud computing, learn some tech skills, and go immediately apply because it's access to cloud. That was very useful in getting people to change careers, people who had already been sort of in the field, but we are still missing that internal funnel. We have a very small pool of STEM-related graduates in South Africa. Universities are doing a fantastic job, but it's still not enough for what we need. And our gap that we identified was, well, I guess where we can make a difference is sort of in the grade 8 plus kind of space. And we piloted a program last year in collaboration with, I think it was Deloitte and the Western Cape government, to take the educators for that grade 8 to 10, 8 to 12, and run them through a pilot program where we improved the educator STEM skills their interest, their awareness around specific tech. It's a combination of classroom-based training and then online training after that. So we ran that for 50 educators in the Western Cape. It was quite successful. We then did 50 in Johannesburg at our office. And then across Nigeria, Kenya, we did 100 more in that space. Because of how successful that was and the impact we've seen, we actually earlier this year opened up a Think Big space, which is a STEM lab in our new offices in Cape Town, where this is going to become a permanent program. So we have this year 100 more educators who are putting through the paces on STEM, but in specifically things like tech, AI, data. And I think we've got to focus on where can we make that difference, but it's not just on teaching the skills, it's teaching the ability to think, teaching the ability to be curious and keep learning new stuff, because the tech is changing. What was good 3 months ago isn't as valuable today. So we've got to keep investing in those spaces. But I was thinking through, in fact, as we were talking in the room earlier, a lot of that skill doesn't sit in just educators or in the education space. The people with the strong tech skills, the strong STEM skills, they typically go into other spaces, either into business or in engineering or something like that. So those strong tech skills, strong STEM skills, science, math, we've got to get those back into the ecosystem. And so I've been pushing my teams to do things like guest lectures, tutoring students, etc. We need to see more of those kind of collaborations, but on a much larger scale.
Thank you, Terence. I mean, that's excellent. Just listening to your description of what you're doing for educators, I know that when we last spoke and just your thoughts on that, and you don't have to answer me now, but you spoke about a science lab, and I'd like to challenge AWS to consider partnering with Regenesys in terms of something similar or on that level. But I also want to talk about what you've just mentioned, just a second, and I see that the timekeeper is saying that my time's up. When you mentioned that it's African solutions for the people of Africa, and I think that is poignant, and sometimes we miss that. If I think back, and not to mention any higher education institutions, but if I think back to 2016 and decolonization and hashtag fees must fall, the movement was exactly that. It was about epistemic justice. How do our students gain access to knowledge that's equitable, fair, but that's also knowledge that's relevant for the African context? So again, I commend and applaud that. So I'm going to wrap up. I see that the timekeeper said I've got 5 minutes, but I'm going to wrap up with one question that I'm going to ask each of our education experts and industry leaders to answer. You're on a stringent time schedule, but as you wrap up and you answer the question, also just give us your concluding comments as well in terms of this event, in terms of your thoughts of how we can take this forward. And I know that Dr. Makapa, you kept on asking, what is Regenesys doing differently? I do want to plug in, when technology works, it revolutionizes the space. Tonight, our technology was working without sound, and that's what Regenesys is thinking about in terms of pushing the envelope. Gone are the days where brick and mortar is going to be our parameters. We're not going to be limited by that. So we're looking at reaching students in those far-reaching areas. Recently I was talking to one of the directors at the DHET, and she had mentioned something similar along those lines, that when I said we want to go into Limpopo, we want to take those headsets, and I'm not going to give away too much, but we want to really take education to the students. And she said, Kamala, it's in Limpopo, some of the top math students are actually in Limpopo. So that's something that you really need to look into. Okay, I'm not going to get carried away. So to sum up, and I want us to think about the power between public and private collaboration. So to all of my esteemed guests, and perhaps I won't put you on the spot, Dr. Makapa, I'll start with Dr. Kaven. So technology and data can be game changers in education. How can the private sector and institutions like Regenesys work more closely to close this digital divide, enhance teacher development, and bring innovation into the classroom?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer quickly, but for me, you know, when partnerships form around solving a problem, there's urgency, there's a goal, there's incentive, there's motivation, and there's, you know, there's an intrinsic reward in getting to the end point. So I think you know, if it's just around developing curriculum, if it's just around, you know, building labs, these things are very short-lived. We've seen these things don't sustain themselves. But if you form partnerships to solve real problems, and I mean the SDGs is an example, those are very far away from being solved. In a day and age that we are spending so much of money on military priorities, it's unspeakable that we can not solve issues of water, housing, food. It is not a money issue. It is not a money issue. It's about mindset and applying, and a coalition of the willing, directing our resources in solving something that puts these things to rest finally.
For me, I think it's something that Ria said resonated quite well. It's quick action. So two things: playing around, getting your hands dirty. So you can't teach something that you don't know. So educators, people around, get access to the tech, get access to whatever you need. Make sure you understand it. That curiosity comes from you as a role model, and then other people see it and they want to get into it. Just as an aside, a couple of weeks ago at our summit in New York, we announced that all our AI tooling as AWS is going to be free for anyone to play around with for a period of 12 months. So you can go sign up with no credit card, just get a Builder ID, and access to all of the generative AI tools is there for you. So it's not an access problem, it's not a money problem. It's create the space for people to be always curious, always learning, but quick, pragmatic action. I think of like a big curriculum is great, but you've got to be very agile within that and encourage and reward experimentation.
Now, thank you very much. You just spoke about Limpopo. By the way, I'm a Limpopo girl. I'm joining the MEC and whatever. The institute that is training teachers, the MassTech, which is specifically for maths and science and technology, is just 2 streets away from my home. So one of the things that I think should be done is that how do you bring in the private sector in terms of creating virtual libraries, laboratories? Because that's the one area, yes, you're producing number of students in maths and technology and science there, but they end up not getting anywhere because of the resources and all that. So that's one area that we need to think out of the box and say, a laboratory is not about a brick and mortar in a classroom where you're doing that, but it can be done somewhere in the online. But as you do that, you'll always be able to say, how do we create collaborative learning in terms of professional learning communities of those student teachers and teachers working on those platforms collaboratively instead of just doing it the old way. Thanks.
Okay, at least I've had some time to think about the answer. But I think, I want to approach it from a very practical manner. So I think there's 2 aspects to it. One is, from a private sector perspective, personally, those involved in the private sector, and then at a corporate level. So, at a personal level, I would, recommend simple things like a buddy system that sort of leads to mentorship. So, partnering a student with a buddy in a corporate environment, where they have a similar interest. So, the student studying, whether that student's going to become an educator or going into another field of or another vocation, buddying with somebody in the corporate sector so that they have somebody to call on, somebody to ask questions. Because what I often find is that in the academic sector, there's a lot of questions that people do have. They don't have the corporate experience or the experience of working in a corporate environment, and we can help them with that, you know. So that's something very practical. Get a mentor or establish sort of mentorship programs. Then the second thing I would recommend is, and we actually love doing this in the corporate world, invite us to come and speak to your students. You know, tell them what we do in our jobs on a daily basis. Talk to them about something complex and how we solved it. You know, so let's get practical about it, because I think that will give students and educators a lot of ideas, a lot of answers, and those things don't cost money. They just cost, it's just a matter of time. I know a lot of people in my company and other companies would be more than willing to be mentors, to be buddies, to be invited to give talks on their practical experience, their life lessons, etc. So something just very practical.
I think they've taken all my words, but I think one of the things that when you talk about relationship, I don't think there's that much relation between industry and most of our education, whether it's schooling, it's university. And I mean, something that, you know, maybe, I mean, from both, nobody's trying to make a move. I always give an example that the next, what you call the BMW X3, the new BMW X3, it's in Roslyn down the road, but nobody knows what's happening there, which is not far. We don't visit it. And we're, I mean, all these cars, I'm told, we sell all over the world, but you don't even know what's happening just around the corner. It's because of we're not engaged with that as well. But one thing that when you talk about partnership, I mean, issue around guest lectures, you know, where people come in to come and give guest lectures, and not only that, allowing some of our educators to come into those spaces to see how things work. Sometimes somebody's teaching something, but they've never been exposed in that particular field. And not only, even learners as well. You know, when I grew up, we used to have this visit to various, you know, companies. And again, it's through there that you learn, you see. And when in my previous job, I can't talk about it here, I think the issue around graduate development program, we used to get students as cold as they were from university, not understanding our background within the mining, what types of minings that we have. So we take them through a graduate development program. It's something that I think that model we can, you know, be able to share with those that are coming into teaching spaces on how you don't just come in as cold as a teacher, but there's a process that you have to go through, professionalization, issues around ethics, and I think that's a model that can be utilized, and that's where industry can really impart that knowledge into the teaching space. And my parting shot as well, we'd like to congratulate you, hoping that you're going to contribute to the teachers of the future, not you know, something that can really impact and change our country. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, I have been kindly requested by Ms. Ella for just one more response, and I have to say yes, because we want this relationship.
It's not necessarily on that question, but if I don't say it, I wouldn't have done justice. In fact, I wouldn't have earned my salary. Look, you are producing STEM teachers. You will be, or whatever. But unfortunately, those are the teachers that I'm striking off from the role every day. And something that you need to consider in terms of your curriculum on ethical issues. The reason being, all of us as parents, we want our children to be excelling in math, science, and technology. And what do? They become the tutors of our children on a daily basis. Every weekend, every Saturday, I'm sitting with your child. We are working the next 2 Saturdays, whatever is coming to the thighs. The next day, the books are no longer being looked, it's facing in the eyes, the rest is history. So those are some of the things from an ethical perspective we need in terms of our curriculum. Because principals are on my case every day. This is my best teacher, unfortunately we have to strike them off. So that's one of the things we need to look into. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Ella. Colleagues, we have run out of time, but I just want to say thank you very much for your ideas and participating in the panel. We really, really appreciate it. I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Verve. Thank you so much. But first, Karabo. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Kamala. Well done. Excellent job. I'm also being pressed for time. I know we can't keep you longer than this, but we have to give our chairman the last word to do a vote of thanks. In terms of call for action, I'm sure you've heard from all the speakers here, the MEC, they've given us something to do, and which means every single one of us have something to do. We can do something where we are in our organizations, and we can partner with Regenesys on every single aspect that has been mentioned today, whether it's about policy or it is about just doing the basic thing of engaging with our students or our educators. Let me ask Dr. Saravanya to do a vote of thanks on behalf of Regenesys.
Thank you, Vivian. I know we are running very late, so I'll be very, very, very quick. Thank you for coming tonight here. I think we have a common dream, which is about making the world a better place. That's why you are here tonight. We know this is possible only through education. Without education, nothing can happen. There cannot be economic development. There cannot be unemployment solution of any problems. There's no competitiveness. There's no future. Now, what Regenesys is going to do differently with our School of Education as compared to many other schools of education. So what we really want to do is to produce like super teachers, holistically developed teachers, not only developing IQ, rational intelligence, and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, That's foundations. IQ is foundation. So we want to develop like really smart, super smart, intellectually people, But we believe at Regenesys there are even other intelligence, at least 5 other intelligence on top of this, which we are going to develop. So we're going to develop these teachers holistically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and in terms of artificial intelligence. Okay, so STEM is just one of the things. It's foundational. Okay, so that's what we want to do. So every teacher must be physically also intelligent, must be fit, energetic, and healthy. Because every teacher is role model. Every teacher touches thousands of children in his or her life. Okay, it's a massive, massive impact on society, on the future of society. So teachers also must be emotionally and spiritually intelligent, because knowledge is power, and without power, without moral compass, knowledge can be dangerous. It's like atomic energy; it can be good or bad. Look at the problems today we have in the world. Look at the suffering in Gaza, Ukraine, South Sudan. It's all about leadership. We're lacking conscious leadership. So we are going to produce conscious teachers, not just ordinary teachers, not even teachers. Teachers who are going to be like missionaries, public servants, servants who are going to serve, not public servants who want to be served. Public servants who are going to say, what can I do for my country, not what country can do for me. Emotionally intelligent. Teachers who are going to teach out of love and for love. Teachers who are going to recognize in every child divinity, talent, genius, that every child can become an amazing entrepreneur, can solve the problem, employ thousands of people, and become billionaire. Teachers are going to look at the eyes of every child and see divinity. Teachers are going to say to children, you are intelligent, not you are stupid. Teachers are going to say to children, you are beautiful. Because what happens if you say to your child, you're stupid? Child grows with this complex fear, and life becomes mess. If you tell your child that you're beautiful, you're a princess, child becomes beautiful, grows. You know. So teachers who are going to awaken potential of our children, awaken greatness. You know,